our moderator for this is Alex Goldman. And I think most of you here know who Alex Goldman is, but he is the co-host of Reply All. And when Feels Good Man started, my background is motion graphics and cartoons and illustration and design. And I felt comfortable with that part of the filmmaking of Feels Good Man, but the stuff I didn't feel comfortable with was the journalism of it. And Reply All was such like a constant companion for me while we were making this movie. It really was kind of my J school, because so much of the dialogue between Alex and PJ is them like cracking the code. It's them solving the case. And I really sort of appreciated how it's as much about sort of process as the stories themselves. So we couldn't think of a better guest for our premiere as Alex. So thank you, man. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. I mean, we're going to be taking questions from the audience, but I actually wanted to ask you a question first.
Sure thing.
If that's okay, because I have also interviewed Matt Fury twice for our show. Our show is like an internet-based show, and we talk a lot about internet stuff. So Matt, of course, is going to be like a natural person who will end up on our radar. But I never figured out a way. Like I had a hard time interviewing him.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. It is because I think Matt is like a relentlessly positive person. And even when he's stressed out, he kind of like tries to let things roll off of him. Mm-hmm. And like, it was hard for me to get him to be vulnerable. I would say it was impossible for me to get him to be vulnerable. Because he would just be like, no, it's gonna be cool. It's cool. Yeah, it's cool. Whatever, it's cool. Yeah. And I'm curious, like, how you got him in those moments where he expressed the doubt and frustration and like those sort of like limits of his positivity. That's a really good question, and it's appropriate to this conversation as well. You know, Matt was going to maybe be on this call at one point. And he has been tentatively trying to do some press with us for the film. And, you know, that has been something that I think has been occasionally uncomfortable for him for exactly the reasons you're talking about. You know, it's an interesting thing to be a subject of the documentary. But the answer to your question, though, is we just really had to spend a lot of time with Matt. And that final interview where you really kind of feel for Matt, we shot that in New York at Desert Island Comics. I'm wearing their t-shirt here, but we only had an hour to shoot that. And we were shooting it during morning rush hour traffic before the store opened. And we basically had like 5 to 10 minute, like, I mean, not even that, like 1 or 2 minute bursts in between the sound of like, you know, traffic. You know, it's right on Metropolitan, yeah. Like, oh, everything. Dogs like barking, garbage trucks, like it was crazy. So with that one, we really kind of like hit Matt hard, and he gave us some of his most like pointed stuff that really, you know, a lot of that stuff made it into the film. And then also that conversation was right on the heels of that conversation that we filmed with Giorgio and David Usui of Matt having a conversation with Oren Siegel of the ADL. And I think that conversation, as you can tell in the movie, was really emotionally impactful on Matt. And so I think he was a little bit of a raw nerve, and that really gave us the third act of the film, you know? But you're right, Matt likes to play it cool. He always kind of thinks about how the other person is feeling, and he never wants to kind of bum them out. And so sometimes that is a little hard to push through, but I think that's why he's such a relatable protagonist in a film too. Have other movements followed Hong Kong's positive use of Pepe? Well, Giorgio has been doing our social media, so maybe you can answer that, because the Pepe, even the use of Pepe in the US has shifted since we finished this film in December.
Yeah, I've been doing our social media, although I've sort of taken the voice of my mother and like as our social media presence. So I respond to everyone with like honey and just immense amount of patience and like just like blissful naivete about whatever the hell's going on. But it's been really encouraging, to be quite honest, especially when we launched our TikTok account, which was a very eye-opening experience. It was like, you know, when the trailer initially dropped, I think we were all very aware that it was going to get some kind of pushback from a certain contingency of the online world. And lo and behold, it definitely did happen if you just scroll through the comments on our YouTube trailer. But like then we launched the TikTok, and it's like, I mean, I have to say, for as emotional and moving as social media can get, like the response from the kind of Gen Z community of TikTok has been incredibly heartwarming. Like it's like they just get it. There's no translation issues there. They don't need to be explained that this isn't a film about like this hate symbol. It's a film about their lives in many ways, and like they're so excited about taking back Pepe, like these things that we talked about, like, or how can we like move this into a kind of social action kind of project, and like they're kind of taking it upon themselves. And then I should also say that like Twitch, essentially Pepe on Twitch is like its own linguistic set there that has absolutely nothing to do with all of the crap that went on in 2016. He's like a very popular emoji there for generally very wholesome and funny kind of reaction.
Hans H asks, what do you think Pepe's role in the 2020 election will be? I hope he's going to sit this one out, honestly.
I agree. I think the alt-right no longer sees him as useful.
I think that like there's a point at which like the whole like if normies co-opt this thing, we're going to fight them. They lost that fight. Like normies have completely co-opted Pepe. Pepe has been basically rendered anodyne by sort of the proliferation of the character itself, right? So it just feels like it's really hard for them to imbue it with the sort of sinister meaning that they want.
Well, to the extent that also that there's this pushback from people that say that, oh, the Taiwanese collective, like this hyper collective, hyper social movement that's using Pepe is actually like very pro-Trump. There's like this interest in even co-opting that. And of course it didn't work because, you know, the very basis of that collective uprising is completely antithetical to all of the antisocial kind of behavior behind 2016.
Grace asks, how involved was Matt Fury in the art direction?
So Matt, very early on, it's funny, Matt really kind of let us make the movie that we wanted to make, and I'm really thankful for that. He obviously was like really involved, and you know, we licensed Pepe from him, and then that allowed us to fair use sort of all of the memes and everything. But he really wanted us to make the artistic decisions that we felt were relevant. That said, when this whole process started, the one thing he made me promise him was like, make sure the animations don't suck. And so I took that to heart.
that is a real frustrating problem, especially with documentaries.
Yes.
And animation. So it was very edifying to watch a movie which right away starts with this like long sequence. It was very satisfying to watch with him, you know, tumbling through space, and it's not just sort of like 4 frames a second, you know?
Yeah. Well, that was done mostly by Kylan Woodrow and Jenna Caravello, that first sequence.
Shout out.
And, yep. And I know Nicole is watching. So, hey, Nicole. Nicole did the final swimming away animation, and she also did the funeral sequence animation that was really special. And so, Matt did give us some storyboards, because the main thing Matt wanted to make sure was that Pepe looked correct. So for instance, there's an animation of memes sort of moving through time. It's like Pepe is swimming, and then he ends up in this sort of like flip book animation as we see Pepe throughout like the last millennia. And so those were all drawings done by Matt that then we colored in and created. And then also there was a Matt and I were talking about David Lynch, and we were talking about Twin Peaks. And so there's an image of Pepe in the mirror, and that was based on a conversation that Matt and I had about Bob in Twin Peaks. And so that was something where I had Matt like sketch that up and email it to me, and then we put that together sort of as a crew.
But like also in general too, I mean, the ambition of the film, especially the animation, was in a way to like canonize Pepe, right? This was like our theory on all this, the idea about why it was so co-opted. It's a kind of incredible story if you really look at it in terms of just the pure virality of it. Like, I hope if someone out there, I would think this Q&A potentially has a higher potential for maybe data driven people to be watching, but if anyone has the data, like I would venture to guess that Pepe is like one of the most popular cartoon characters in the world. And it's all based on the power of Matt's drawing, right? Like he doesn't have a giant conglomerate behind Pepe just pushing marketing dollars into sort of creating the branding behind Pepe. So in that absence, in that void, the internet sort of filled in a narrative for him. And in a sense, that's a beautiful thing. I think in the case of Hong Kong, it's beautiful to see how that organically happened, but obviously in other ways it's not. And so the film and the animations in particular were our effort to kind of canonize them so people could start to understand that, like, okay, this is Pepe canon, and everything else is just kind of fun or not fun.
And I do have to say, like I drew Pepe a lot for this movie, and he's a fun character to draw. I am not sick of drawing Pepe. I think there's just an innate quality to him.
I found myself, I'm not an artist by any stretch, but I'm definitely a doodler. And I found myself being really fixated on his eyes after watching, but I watched the movie twice, and both times I was like, it's like semicircles upon semicircles, just go on for infinity. It's just so bizarre. This is from Sasa. Sasa asked, and I hope I'm pronouncing it right, S-A-S-A, Sasa. To Alex and the filmmakers, how do you wrap your mind around 4chaners dismissing journalism about memes with, quote unquote, haha, 4chan was messing around and you fell for it?
I want to hear your response.
I want to hear Alex's take on it.
I've seen those kinds of comments and threads about this documentary, and it feels like it's an argument that's impossible to win. Why would you ever argue with anybody on 4chan, first of all? That is an impossible argument. Do you remember the part in fucking The Big Lebowski where what's his name? Walter keeps saying, "I'm calmer than you are, dude. Calmer than you are."
Yeah.
It's like, "I'm fucking calm," and he's like, "I'm calmer than you are." That is like the raison d'etre of a 4chan. That's just what they want. That's just like the behavior they want to provoke in you. And I think that it's like obvious. It's prima facie just ridiculous that it's just a meme and it doesn't have any impact. I mean, when the Christchurch shooter is doing the OK symbol in handcuffs after killing dozens of people, like it's not worth arguing about.
Right.
Is my opinion, because it's obvious that this stuff influences people. And it's like, yes, okay, you guys pulled a prank by making people think the OK symbol is a symbol of white supremacy. But now white supremacists think the OK symbol is a symbol of white supremacy.
Right.
Therefore, the OK symbol is a symbol of white supremacy. It's a joke to you, and among you guys, it's real funny, but it's real. You've made something real. And the fact that you don't feel any accountability for it is like really dangerous, and it speaks to like many layers of problems with the internet.
See, we've always viewed this movie as like sort of an act of media literacy. And so, what you're talking about is someone gaslighting you, and that's something that we've been just having a larger cultural conversation around. It's now something that I think we just kind of recognize as a tool that people use to like gain influence and obfuscate their agenda. So yeah,
it's also just, I mean, it was really hard to figure out how to finish this film, but Matt delivered an ending that I think it was really profound for me. And I honestly, like, I choke up every time I see the film, and it really, our editor, Aaron, had kind of put together a rough ending pretty early on that I thought was really great. But then it wasn't until the Hong Kong storyline came in that really served to fortify Matt's kind of initially pithy statement, but just the idea of like hardcore happiness. And you can dismiss it as a kind of woo-woo California idea, but I think behind it is a real struggle, especially in this world, to like reject cynicism rightly, and like to understand that you have agency in the way that you can feel, and that you can turn off the internet, and that you can resist the urge and the forces that like commoditized internet social media imposes upon you to feel shitty and to feel that division and to shame you out of your capacity for compassion, and just reject it and say like, it's not cringy to give a shit. Like I cannot stand that meme of just like responding to anything that has any shred of emotion as cringe. It's just like the most, and of course it's usually like 14-year-olds that are saying that, but there's also like 40-year-olds that are saying that. And it's like, just fucking grow up, man. Like this is what we have. This brief moment on earth that we have is like, we're here and we're together and we've got to figure this shit out. And like, it's not going to work if like cynicism is no way to build a society. So
one of the weirder things that has happened in the last 4 years is that Donald Trump Jr. has become sort of like a meme.
Yeah, very self-consciously. Yes.
And he has adopted sort of like 4chan mindset where like it's ridiculous to care about anything. But like, if you want to talk about cringe, fuck, dude. Online presence is so fucking cringe. It's tough. Yeah, congratulations, guys.
Thank you.
And thank you for choosing me to be the first person
Dude,
to be.
it's no, it was just a way for me to get to meet you.